Award-winning science fiction writer Robert J. Sawyer is our guest. He's written 20-some...
20 novels now,
20
yes.
novels. Your first?
Was Golden Fleece in 1990.
Do you still remember all the titles?
Oh, yes.
I
Yes. They're
bet
like my
you
children.
do.
Even if you have 20 kids, you're going to remember their names. You may forget their
Exactly.
birthdays, but you'll remember their names.
Was there one really hard to get finished because of the research, because it just wasn't going anywhere, you didn't know how to start it or end it?
Honestly, this trilogy, Wake, Watch, and Wonder, started as a single novel, and I'd sold it to a different publisher originally, and I struggled for a year to deliver the book I had contracted to deliver. And I finally had to say to that publisher, I can't do this as one book. It's too big, and there's too much research still to be done. So I did a different book for them. In fact, I did a book called Rollback, which I'll just mention as a stage play has been written based on Rollback by a playwright in Prince George, British Columbia. The play is debuting May 4th in Prince George and then going on to the Theatre BC Festival. And I'm coming back to British Columbia to see the play. But
Maybe
I wrote that.
you can come back here to talk about the play.
Well, that's an interesting idea. Perhaps I can arrange that. So I had to come back and work on this trilogy because I did abandon it, this project, and re-envisioned it as a much bigger work. And ultimately, it was the toughest thing I'd ever written, Wake, Watch, and Wonder.
And when you put a character like a Caitlin Dechter together, she's very sexy, she's feisty, she can't see until she gets the implant, then she only sees out of one eye, but she's sexy, and she has another life.
Yes.
You know, she has, isn't it Matt?
Matt is her boyfriend.
Matt is her boyfriend, and I think she was flashing Matt her
Yes,
boobs,
she was, which is
wasn't she?
these girls do these days, you know, with their cell phones and texting. They have this phrase called sexting, which is provocative texting and so forth. Trying to write a teenage, these books are set in the present day. They're maybe science fiction, but they're not in the future. And I tried to accurately capture what teenage girls were like today. Not what they were like when I was a teenager, but how teenager girls today engage with Facebook, their online lives, as well as their offline lives. Not all of it is what parents would approve of, but my job isn't to provide a role model. My job is to provide verisimilitude, accuracy, really capture what the life of a teenage girl today is like. And the teenage girls who have read the book, in great numbers to my delight, have told me how good a job I did of capturing that.
And what happens in your fan club, in online discussion? What kind of reaction do you get to this trilogy? Have you gotten so far?
Oh, it's been wonderful. The book, Wonder, the third one, came out a week ago in Canada. And yesterday was the official American release date. But it's amazing when the book is just out and people have devoured it within hours of getting it in their hands. Of course, the trilogy's, you know, it's been a year since the last volume, so people have been waiting. It's a pent-up demand. The response has been overwhelmingly gratifying. You know, an author is always nervous, especially when you're finishing a series. If it doesn't end on a good note, people are going to let you know. They're going to say, I spent years waiting for this. The response has been some of the best I've ever had, and I'm very, very pleased.
How great. Well, I did that with Stieg Larsson. First I wasn't going to read it.
Yes.
Then I was going to look at it.
Yes.
And then I was going to read a little bit, and then I found myself on number 3 buying a hardcover. Full price.
Yes.
Because I couldn't wait.
Absolutely. I mean, those books are gigantic. We have the same publisher in Canada, Penguin, but Stieg Larsson buoys all of Penguin's fortunes across the globe.
Yeah, no kidding. You tackle in these books who we are, where we are going, but first where we are now, really.
Yes. Absolutely. They're anchored in the here and now. These are books that are set in the present day and deal with the incredible changes that have happened. You know, it took me 6 years to write this trilogy. If you think back when I started this 6 years ago, no one had ever heard of the iPhone, let alone the iPad. No one had ever heard of the Kindle or Kobo ebook reading device. Facebook was only at Harvard University. It was not out there. There was no Twitter. The whole world has changed in just the last 6 years. And it's an exhilarating rate of change. The world is changing at an incredible pace. And one of the reasons we read science fiction is to keep our minds nimble for absorbing that kind of change so that we can deal with it, that we're not floored by it when something hits us in the face.
Or afraid of it.
Or, that's right.
Now that we're in the high-tech, high-touch world,
yes,
it reminds me of my grandfather, my great-grandfather, going into the industrial age. They were suspect. The first Ford comes out. They're thinking, well, I don't know. I think I'll stick to the horse and buggy. that car could run away with me.
Exactly, exactly.
Why do you think we are reluctant as humans to embrace this type of change? Or why are we afraid of it? Certainly our kids aren't.
No.
But you talk to boomers, zoomers, some are all over it, and some say, you know, I don't have a cell phone, I'm never getting a computer, I don't do email, I like to talk to people.
Yes, and it's harder and harder to find somebody who wants to talk to you. They would rather get a text. Of my generation, and certainly the younger generations, we multitask. We want to do multiple things simultaneously. You and I'd like to think that everybody's glued to their TV set right now, but we know they're cooking or they're cleaning or they're getting ready for their day or whatever. They're doing multiple things at once. The old-fashioned way of doing it, where you're on the phone and I have taken your attention from you while we're talking, doesn't fit in with today's world. People want to be able to do all of their senses engaged and all of their brain engaged all the time. And that means multitasking. And our new technology lets us do that in a way our old technology never did.
Exactly, and now they're making laws to tell us we can't do it in certain places.
Well, not when you're driving the car. You shouldn't be texting, for instance.
So where can the human being, which needs to find grounding and solace and spirit, where can you find that today in this age of bombardment? People can find you anywhere, they can text you anywhere, they can tweet.
You know, people talk about my industry of publishing being in a very precarious state. But in fact, this is one of the few solitary pleasures we still have, is curling up with a good book, and a paper book, not one that's on your iPad where you're also doing email and Twitter and all of that. One of the solaces people have in life at the end of the day or on the weekend is they get a paper book, they sit in their favorite chair, and they shut out the world for a couple of hours. And that's why the joy of reading is going to continue despite all of this technology we're surrounded with.
Why do you think the genre of science fiction doesn't seem to get, maybe it does, you tell me, enough respect? Mystery, yes.
Yes.
Detective novels, yes.
You know, my
romance,
books are taught at universities across Canada, but there is no doubt that there is some prejudice against the field. George Lucas did us all an enormous disservice. Star Wars was a wonderful film, but it was mindless, escapist, adolescent action adventure. Prior to that, you look at the science fiction films from the 1960s, 2001: A Space Odyssey, a great literary film. Planet of the Apes, a great satiric film about race relations and nuclear war. All of that relevancy or real artistry that was in the films of the 60s was replaced by this blockbuster Saturday matinee kind of thing. And people for the 3 decades since who have never read a word of science fiction think they know what science fiction is because they saw Luke Skywalker blow up the Death Star. And we struggle against that misperception.
So if it's not that.
It's not that. In fact, I don't even like the name science fiction. I wish it was called philosophical fiction, because it really is the literature of ideas. It could still have a silly name. Instead of being sci-fi, it could be fi-fi if it was philosophical fiction.
Or sci-fu.
Something like that. That's
Something
right.
like that, because it's true.
Yes.
When you read good science fiction,
yes,
it makes you think and ponder and wonder, and the next time Barack Obama, president, is making a decision in the Oval Office with the head of the Pentagon and Hillary Clinton to shut something down in this country, you know, you talk about it.
Yes, absolutely.
In a different way, because you've read this and you see what's happened with the Colonel.
Absolutely. Our goal as science fiction writers is not just to preach to the science fiction audience, but to get the whole world to engage in that kind of extrapolative thinking and to not be afraid of the future. And when we succeed, we actually do have an impact on public policy, and that is a wonderful thing. I've done consulting for Canada's Federal Department of Justice. I have friends who consult for the Pentagon who are science fiction writers, and that's important to be part of that dialogue.
Man versus machine.
Yes.
Woman versus machine.
Absolutely.
Human versus machine. The showdown, really, between men and machines.
It's inevitable that at some point in this decade, or maybe the next, there will be things on this planet that are brighter than we are. And we will cease to be the most intelligent things on planet Earth. We have to prepare for that, or else inevitably, that word you use, showdown, we're going to be on the losing end because it's going to happen and be over before we know it, the showdown. We have to think about it in advance if we want to come out surviving that circumstance.
Exactly, at our prepared best.
That's right.
Will
absolutely.
I marry a robot? I don't know. But will he be smarter than I am? Perhaps.
And if he isn't today, he will be a year later, because robots and computers
sure.
grow exponentially.
And as a futurist, you see us in 50 years where?
I see us as being in a very prosperous position. The economy of scarcity that we've lived with to date will be replaced by an economy of abundance. Human beings will live much longer. We'll live at least 150 years, if not 200 years, before the end of this century. And we will be at, I like to think, in the scenario in Wake, Watch, and Wonder, at peace with the machines, which are, after all, our children. We did create them.
And on that note, I thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Fly safely to Tokyo, and you'll have a marvelous time. I'm sure you're the keynote at this big...
That's right. That's right.
This big hoo-ha.
HalCon in Tokyo. I'm the keynote speaker.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Robert J. Sawyer.